So now we have this. Holy fuck, that's loud. So listen to the Pink Tape by Lil Uzi Vert. And honestly, it was a bit of a stylistic mess. However, here's some things that you can learn from it that will improve your music production. So yeah, let's jump straight into it. So number one is a bit of a more abstract tip. And it's blending heavy distorted guitars with a trap beat. Uzi is definitely not the first one to do it. He's just the most recent example to do it right. So artists like Playboi Carti have been doing it for quite some time. There's also the rage wave beats and all that, which feature heavy guitar, heavy distorted guitar most of the time. But Lil Uzi Vert kind of leaned more into the metal side of the guitar, so there's definitely a bit of a different sound to it. I hope the success of this album means that more artists are going to get into a more metal sound. I'm just fiending for more Bring Me the Horizon collabs. Now the rest of the tips are going to be in FL Studio, so let's just quickly transition to that. Whoa! So tip number 2 is shaping the guitar tone and being a bit more adventurous with how you do it. I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but as a non-guitar player, all I do is just go through Guitar Rig and find a preset. However, this time I went a bit more adventurous with it because I thought the presets from Guitar Rig were a bit too limiting to what I wanted to do. All you have to do is open Guitar Rig and get a nice amp. So for any metal, I would suggest Fire Breather because it sounds really raw just by itself, and I'll show you. Here's just a clean guitar tone. All right, not great. Okay, so it's already sounding pretty heavy. For any kind of like major distortion, I'm gonna use Thermal just because I think it sounds much nicer than Guitar Rig. So now we have this. Holy fuck, that's loud. So for the second take of the guitar, I completely changed the tone. So I kept the amp, but I added Thermal and I used Dark and Dangerous. I suppose the important takeaway is just don't stick to Guitar Rig and just hope that you find the perfect tone. You can actually do quite a lot with just other effects. You don't have to use guitar effects. I know it's self-explanatory for a lot of you, but I know I'm not alone in just browsing through presets. Okay, so tip number 3 is double taking your guitars. And I know a lot of you are just groaning now and sighing and being like, oh, but obviously, whatever. However, I know that a lot of people just copy and paste their guitar. I used to do that as well. I found out that if you just do a second take of playing not the same thing, just slightly differently, you're going to get a much better result. And it sounds much more interesting than just copying and pasting. Okay, so this is the first guitar take. And this is the second one. So as you can hear, the strumming pattern on the second one is a bit different than the first one. So when you combine them, they sound kind of cool. So this way you achieve some cool sounds that you wouldn't have otherwise achieved. So yeah, definitely just double take your guitars. Don't just copy and paste. Tip number 4 is using acoustic drums as well as electronic drums. So a lot of you that have made boom bap before or lo-fi, even trap sometimes, have these top loops or other, just like a drum break playing over the main drums. And that gives you kind of like a certain feel. And it makes your drum sound more full. So this goes for this type of music as well. Okay, so for the chorus, I'm playing this pattern. So it's a kick, a snare, and a China cymbal. Now, I know a lot of people that just make trap or pop or just stick to like more non-rock or metal genres might not even know what a China cymbal is because you don't. When do you ever hear a China cymbal in like a Taylor Swift song? You know what I mean? It's very common in metal, and in this specific song, it really added to the drums. So here's how the drums sound without the acoustic drums. It's certainly cool, but if you add the acoustic drums, here's how it sounds like. It makes it so much heavier just because you're following that metal beat of just like slamming the China cymbal and a slow snare. It just sounds really heavy. Tip number 5 is to do with dynamics. So to make sure that your verses sound a bit more subdued and your chorus sounds all out, balls to the wall, here's how the verse sounds compared to the chorus. So they're still like banging drums. They're still like hard. It's just they're a bit more subdued. While in the chorus, it just goes all out. Okay, and that's basically how you manage the energy of your song, because if you have a high energy verse, a high energy chorus, and a high energy pre-chorus and everything, then everything is high energy and you don't have the balance between the two. You don't have like highs, you don't have lows, you only have highs. So you can't really appreciate it. So yeah, play with your dynamics a bit. Tip number 6 is, if you want the beat to slap and kick and punch and be hard, stick to fewer elements. So find a kick and an 808 that go together and hit hard. Just get some guitar, play, or just use a plugin, make it distorted, and then just play a melody. That's all you need. You don't need a billion layers. All you need is maybe like 2 layers for your melody, 2 layers for the guitar, and that's it. Relatively simple. This beat right here, it sounds quite full. So there's only a few elements, yet it sounds very full and it slaps, because simplicity is key when you want something to hit hard. Tip number 7 is to do with your structure of the song. If you want a high energy song like this, I would say keep it shorter. Don't go for like 32 bar verses or whatever, just because it's hard to maintain that energy for 32 bars. So for this, I have a verse, a chorus, a verse, a double verse, sorry, and then a chorus. That's it. All in all, the song finishes at about 2 minutes. That's all you need. And that way, the energy is preserved. It keeps you wanting more. And yeah, the chorus is hit, the verse is hit, everything hits. And yeah, definitely keep the song shorter, or on the shorter side. Final eureka moment for me here was the mixing, or more specifically, mixing not in solo. And I know this is a very common tip and some of you might have heard of it, but I personally never really took it that seriously until I started doing it. So that definitely takes a bit more experience to just start doing it first, and then you'll get it. Don't mix, don't hyper focus on one element, because I know a lot of us do that. You can spend hours just crafting the perfect snare, and then it sounds like garbage in your mix. And I'll show exactly what I mean. So I have these 2 guitar layers here. For the more ambient take, I have cut quite a lot of the body of the guitar, and sounds something like this when it's soloed. And there's pretty much no body to it. And that's because I cut it because the other take of the guitar was filling that space. But if I just keep soloing it, I don't hear that in context. And then both of them needed some low-end adjustment because the distortion was making it way too muddy. So now with an 808, they sound like a complete instrument. So yeah, definitely was useful for me to go a bit in depth into the pink tape. I hope these tips were useful for you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.